He just pushed me in right away. Fletcher?
And we are live with the first Cinematicos, and we have for your viewing pleasure, we have Sin
Hello.
Zin's corner, and we have the dynamic, the awesome D Movie Man, and with us first time in the house, we got Anthony Perez. Vamos locos! Here we go. This is Los Cinematicos, and we are live. Take it away, guys.
All right. Well, we are here to talk about what the thumbnail said Superman. So, first, let's introduce ourselves a little bit and then we'll dive right into the discussion. I will try to sort of pay attention to the chat, but this is a little bit of a different format than usual for Polly's shows. So I'm gonna, do the best we can. It's first time. Be gentle, be kind. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm Sin with Sin's Corner. You've probably seen me from time to time popping in on Polly's streams. I mostly focus on movie reviews. I do some live stream stuff, but my heart is talking about movies. So that's what we are going to do today. And with us, we have D Movie Man. Introduce yourself, please.
Hey everyone, this is the Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And that is the summation of what I do over on my channel. I love discussing all things film. Love diving into, a few shows that I really enjoy, especially period pieces. I'm always here for that. And, the occasional trailer reaction and so on. And yeah, I just enjoy talking about film and its personal impact on me and just, some deeper aspects of it that I think doesn't always get acknowledged beyond just entertainment. So if you are so willing, please feel free to check me out at D Movie Man. That is capital D, MovieMann. I would love to have you.
Yes, check him out. It's got a great channel. All right, Anthony.
Well, it's hard to follow that up because Dee's got that great intro that just is so professional and it's just fantastic. But I'm Anthony A. Perez. I got a very generic name, but I think I got myself to the point now where if you type in Anthony Perez reviews, you should find me immediately on YouTube. Thankfully, it took a little bit, but I got there. If you're into movie reviews, TV reviews, live streams, all kind of fun stuff, head on over to my channel. But a big thanks first to Sin for connecting me with Paulie, who got me wrapped up in all this. I've already done now 2 written reviews for the site for the latest Dora the Explorer film, as well as the latest Marvel show, Ironheart, that's gotten some mixed reviews. But yeah, anyway, if you guys are into a lot of movie-related content, then head on over to my channel because there is an endless supply of it. But very happy to be here. Very happy to be here.
Awesome. I'm so glad you guys are here. I love chatting with both of you. So I'm comfortable with this whole discussion thing we've got going on. There was one thing that I did want to go ahead and show. I saw here that there's a new YouTube member for Latino Slant. So I wanted to go ahead and highlight that before we head into our discussion. And my son is standing here. What? I don't know. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so Superman. I've got some questions. I don't know that we'll go through all of them, but just kind of to try to spark discussion, I've got this opening warm-up question. What were your overall impressions of Superman? Did it meet your expectations? And I will start by saying it didn't meet my expectations because I had no expectations. I was not crazy about this movie, but I've made no secret of that fact. But I'm very curious to hear what you guys think because I actually haven't watched any other full-on reviews yet. So, KD.
All right.
So I saw this on Thursday. Friday, Saturday went by, and now it's Sunday. And I realized, when the film was first announced, to its trailers, casting announcements, all that to this moment right now, I have to say the general feeling that I have is probably best expressed in my non-native language, which is me non care. Okay, me don't care. I just zero, nothing, nada. I don't know if it's the history with me and Superman, which has not been the best, but this, whatever I thought I might be getting, it was none of that. So, breaking the ice early.
Okay. All right. What did you not like? Okay. Can you delve a little bit further into that?
Here's the thing. I understand that when you go to an extreme visually, like Zack Snyder did with Batman versus Superman, I know that was a very divisive film. I understand for some folks it's like, good gracious, the shadows, the gray, the blue hues, the just the darkness and the shadowy elements. I understand you want to course correct. But I feel like in course correcting, it went all the way over here, and
Mm.
instead we got something that felt more like Superman of the Galaxy. I
Uh,
just didn't care for the camp. I didn't care for the cheese. I understand it's leaning more into the comic book origins, and I appreciate that. But as audience member watching, it was just like I never felt a personal, emotional investment, and that's where you lose me.
okay. All right, Anthony.
So yeah, I'm definitely gonna be the Superman positive one here on this stream today because I loved the movie. Honestly, I thought it was such a good time. Now, kind of similar with what D said though, just everything between its announcement, the recasting of Henry Cavill right after the tease at the end of Black Adam that we were going to be getting more Superman with Henry Cavill. I think, and I said this in my review for it, I think the biggest bummer about the entire situation is the fact that they had a really solid cast in that previous lineup of films, despite the tonal issues, all those kind of things, and all the different things that made it feel like scattered in terms of its storytelling. Outside of that, I thought that the cast members they got for roles was for the most part pretty solid, and that it may be outside of Ezra Miller for the Flash, but I was pretty excited to see what they were going to do, especially when Snyder's cut got released of Justice League. Like I felt like we were going to maybe finally start moving forward with this iteration, despite any mess ups. Maybe let's get somebody overhead to kind of have a vision for it and kind of course correct. But they decided to start over. So it's like for me, it's like, what do we do now? Do I sit upset about it, or do I kind of just like try to embrace what they're going to do? With all that said, Sin, I don't know if you know this about me. I know D knows this about me, but I am a ginormous comic book fan. So as a kid, comic books were all I was ingesting. And, back into the day of like this stuff wasn't cool. Like I have stories of people like grabbing my comic books at school and like throwing them on the ground and stuff like that. Before like these movies popped off. And by the time I was a teenager, some of the same people who were kind of like teasing me for liking this stuff were now like, hey, who's that purple guy at the end of Avengers? Like it's like there was this interest around it that kind of popped off. So all that to say, I love the comic book origins, and I think more often than not, the movies try to ground things in a reality, which is fine. I kind of like that; it gives it its own identity. But I loved that this movie just went for it. It went for the camp. It went for the big, over-the-top spectacle. It felt like a Saturday morning cartoon. My biggest gripe with the film is that it does feel overstuffed. I do think that it is a very overpacked film with a lot of characters, villains, heroes, side characters. It to the point where it's just like, hey, there's all these characters from the Daily Planet. Let's just name drop them and have them in a couple of scenes, but they don't really serve a purpose. So that would easily be my biggest gripe. I don't think it's a perfect film, but when I look at the Superman films we've gotten, all of them, including, or even if I just look at the animated films as well, I felt like this kind of fell in line with the animated world of DC movies, which is a world that a lot of people have always wanted to see. Like it's been such a constant thing where it's like, oh man, especially like the New 52 comic book movies from DC in the last like 10 or 15 years. There's always a conversation amongst DC fans like, I wish they did this in live action. And for me, that's what this was. It felt like it honored the comics. It leaned into the camp. It played with the bigger universe. And it ultimately like just had me hooked in from beginning to end. I had some gripes with some CGI here and there. And there's, a couple of things that, like I said, were overstuffed. But I ultimately walked away from the experience really happy and just grateful that they decided to take a swing and, made Superman feel hopeful again. Very long-winded response. I have more to say, but,
Well, you kind of touched on something that I was getting ready to ask as a follow-up, which was there a moment early in the film that either locked you in or lost you? And it never had me. So that I honestly, I, I went in depth about this in my own review, but I had, like Dee was saying, I felt no emotional connection with almost all of the characters. David Corn Sweat, he's a sweet looking guy. he looks the part ish, but I felt there was just not, I felt nothing. I wasn't pissed at the film, but I wasn't fully in love with it. I was just, it exists. There were a couple of moments that did kind of grab me a little bit, and they were usually the more serious sort of moments, like when he's with his dad and his dad was telling him how proud he is of him. And that kind of got me a little bit, because being a parent, I can identify with that feeling and that closeness, that relationship. And then when he's looking at home videos of his human family, that was sweet. But everything else, pretty much, I didn't care about Lex. I couldn't take Nicholas Hoult seriously as Lex Luthor. Rachel Brosnahan was fine in the role. She didn't offend me or she didn't wow me. She was okay. But she's kind of that kind of actress for me. Like, she's just there, like I'm not super impacted by her performance in pretty much anything I've seen. So my favorite character, you guys, okay, all right, there was a scene I really, really loved. Mr. Terrific, that fight, best part of the whole film for me. And when that happened, I was like, I would rather be watching a Mr. Terrific film than a Superman film. So yeah, that's my thing. Like, it didn't have me from the beginning, unfortunately. So Dee, was there a moment when were you kind of like me and you were just never on board the whole time?
So, I mean, to an extent, but I was going to give it a chance. I would say maybe when Lois and Clark or Superman were having that interview, I was kind of intrigued. I was kind of like, okay, I'm interested in the dynamic here. And I think once, we get to the point where we pull out the whole, basically when Lex Luthor does the whole, hey, this is his actual mission, this is what he came here for, I was like, so how do you get out of this one? So, like, those are kind of two moments where I was like, okay. But then I think I couldn't even really tell you when I was fully out because I was never 100% in. I just know that after a while, the tone of it just really started to grate on my nerves. And I guess whenever, I couldn't tell you which joke specifically, but when I started to realize like the jokes were not landing for me for the most part, and nothing was really working outside of Mr. Terrific, as you said, then I was kind of like, I don't know if my only investment here can be for one character if we have all of this going on, which, as Anthony stated, and to his point, there was a lot going on.
Yeah, someone mentioned that this version of Superman felt more like the goofy version of Shazam in those movies. And I can see that because he kind of acted that way a little bit. Okay, Anthony, your answer to that question.
Yeah, well, my answer to that question is what Dee said, and it's that scene between Clark and Lois when he offers the interview to her, and she starts to interview him and starts to really get into it. Because I think a lot of times, and I said this in my review, this movie it pulls a Spider-Man Homecoming. It's not giving you an origin story, and it's not setting up this iteration of the characters with a beginning per se. It's kind of throwing you right in the middle of a world that's already pre-existed. So Superman already has these connections with characters. He already has a relationship with Lois. He already has a connection with these other future Justice League characters, but now the Justice Gang, or whatever they called themselves, characters. And so I think sometimes for me, and it's just interesting to hear the different takes. For me, a lot of times, I'm kind of inputting my knowledge of these characters and the various iterations I've seen of them onto the versions that I see in a movie. And then, of course, that version is able to be fleshed out in its own thing. All this to say, that was the moment for me that I was like, okay, this feels like Lois and Clark in other iterations, from the page, from cartoons, like her ability to be a reporter first sometimes over a lover or over a partner. I think is one of the interesting dynamics because she is so passionate about that. There's also the Superman and Lois television show as well. And I thought that show captured that dynamic very well as well. So that was the moment that I was like, okay, I think they got Clark and Lois down. And after that, I honestly, it does. I will say this, and I don't want to speak for you guys, but I came into it. It seems a little bit more open. So I know, like, Sin, you weren't really embracing it from the jump, right? Yes. I wanted it to work for me, right? And so once it started to, I kind of just rolled and wanted to see what it did. And ultimately, it just made me feel like a kid again. It made me feel like the cartoons I grew up with. As a kid, I loved the 2000s Superman show, the animated series, the Batman, the animated series as well, the Justice League Unlimited. These are shows that like really for me set up this like the overarching world outside of the pages, being able to see all these characters interact and have certain episodes that were about a set of characters. And so to see Guy Gardner appear and with the funky haircut and all,
Ooh, I'm
but
so glad they addressed that too.
Yes.
right. Well, I love that, like, and that's something I'm curious to see how we move forward with James Gunn. But James Gunn is a, he's a big fan of the niche characters. We've seen that in both Marvel and, he did it with Suicide Squad, and now he's doing it with this. He's a fan of the more niche characters. And while Guy Gardner is somebody who's known to like, big DC fans, when you think of Green Lantern, people tend to think of Jon Stewart, Hal Jordan. They don't really think Guy Gardner. So I thought it was funny that they chose him, but I felt like he felt like Guy Gardner. Same with Hawkgirl. She felt like Hawkgirl. And the one that blew me away, we already talked about Mr. Terrific. He felt like Mr. Terrific. And I've watched majority of the shows and TV shows and movies and animated things that have come out in this world. And, they did Mr. Terrific on Arrow on the CW. And while I think like Stephen Amell is a great Green Arrow, I always felt that like certain side characters like Mr. Terrific were just not handled well. Like he wasn't on screen the way that I always envisioned him from the pages. And so I think this movie did that. And so to answer your question, another long-winded response, I think it was that lowest scene, but it was as we were going that I just felt like he got the characters. My mind just kept going. James Gunn understands these characters. He understands who they're supposed to be. But I can see maybe for like these iterations, maybe they didn't grab people immediately, but I guess there's a part of me that's like kind of instilling this knowledge on them already. I don't know, but it's like I just found myself pulled in pretty early on, and it was that Lois and Clark banter that made me realize I think James Gunn gets these characters, and I just consistently kept thinking that throughout the movie, like, oh, he's capturing who these characters are, to me at least.
Well, I'm glad it worked for you. What, D? You're going to say something?
Yes, and this is not to negate anything Anthony just said, but I just realized something because I said I wasn't necessarily sure like when it fell off for me. I think I couldn't. I'm trying to remember which big, because there were a few big battles here, but I remember there was a specific fight that happened. Maybe it was within the that whole Pocket Universe thing. Not towards the end, but there was something earlier. And I just know like at some point it felt like a big, okay, we're bringing things to a close. And I don't think I was aware of how long it had been. So then once it was over, I was like, okay, I was fine at that point. And my mom looked over and she said, we have an hour left, right? And I was like, what? Oh, wait a minute. Okay. So I think that was probably the point where, because I felt like if I was really invested the way I should have been, the time would have flown. Like with the Batman, I didn't have high expectations for it because I was like, oh my gosh, are we doing this again? And I understand the Batman is the Batman, but it's like, considering I started in like, 92 with Batman Returns and 1989, like then all the way to now, I was just like, is there a way we can do this and I don't have to see Martha and Thomas seeing the pearls fall? Like,
Oh, right.
I don't think I can do this again. And then it actually ended up being rather refreshing. But yeah, I just think at that point I was not. Yeah. Oh, excuse me. My point was with the Batman, that ended up flying by because I didn't think I was going to really enjoy that or have a connection to it. And that ended up being like, whoa, okay. Whereas here I was like, looking at the clock like, all right.
Got another hour to go. Dang it. I almost wish that, and next, after I finish saying what I'm going to say, I'm going to address some of the comments because I have been seeing some of them. I almost wish that Gunn would focus more on these side characters we've talked about, because I think he can help flesh them out a little bit better than what he's doing with these big, huge IPs like Superman. I did not like, yes, Henry Cavill is my Superman, y'all. And I say that because I've never been a big Superman fan. And yes, I used to read comics too. That was my TV when I was a kid because I had no TV. Superman has never been really my favorite because he's so overpowered to me and he's just kind of a blah, boring sort of character. Then Henry Cavill comes along with Zack Snyder at the helm. And I loved that portrayal of him. I know some people did not. They didn't like the dark, gritty, and all of that. And Batman has a gun. How dare he? How dare Superman kill? But Superman has killed in the comics. Batman has used a gun in the comics. There's more to comics than just the golden age, like 70s, 80s, and stuff like that. And I really resonated. That's why Batman is one of my favorite comic book characters because he's not superpowered. And the fact that Snyder was portraying Superman as someone who is had all these layers to him, and he's very complex, and he had all these, things he was struggling with. I really like that. And I love the suit too, the Snyder, the Cavill suit. I hated this suit so much. It was terrible. What the heck was the point of Corn Sweat working his tail off if you can't see that he's worked his tail off? It looked like padding. I was like, what the heck? And those dumb red trunks. Okay. Yeah, and I like David Cornsweet. Isn't no shade on him. Okay, I'm gonna highlight some comments that I saw. Sorry. All right, so Mike stopped in with a very, very sweet comment. The people on screen make me feel more super than Superman made me. I think we know what Mike thinks about it. Hopefully, Polly will have panelists that disagree. Well, yes, you've got your wish on that because we have already disagreed. So, all right. Superman's like a bad hair day. You stay frustrated for the day, but in the end, and looking bad at it, you think that was okay at best. Yeah. It's like, I didn't hate it, didn't love it. It's just there. I don't want to feel that way about a movie, though. Los Cinematicos, haha. I haven't seen it, but I know it's the best movie of the year.
Woo.
All right, Bonzo.
High praise.
Hey, Corey. He said they had me at the John Williams score. Okay. And
I did enjoy that also.
Is Waller still canon to all this cover up? I think Waller.
I don't know.
Aren't they supposed to have a Waller show?
Yeah, I mean, supposedly, is it still going to be Viola Davis? That's the question. I would assume, that's where it gets messy because that's one thing I will say that, and it goes back to what I initially said. I'm both curious and frustrated about the fact that they chose to just kind of not try to course correct with what they had, because I do think they had a really good cast and some really cool elements. There's things that, if they're recasting everybody, that there are characters that were so perfectly cast. And, if we're talking about Waller, that also means Margot Robbie is Harley Quinn, which was perfect casting, and are we going to move away from that? But then the Suicide Squad obviously starred those characters from the first Suicide Squad with the same actors. And then, but in this movie, Rick Flag is played by...
No, that's not Rick Flag. That's his father.
I thought his father was in Creature Commandos.
I didn't see Creature Commandos, but I do know specifically that Frank Grillo is playing the father. Because Frank himself said it on his Facebook page. Because, he's on Facebook. We're friends.
Gotcha.
And he did mention it. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I could see that casting. That kind of works.
Gotcha. I thought because I thought there was a Flag that's also in. Well, then even then it makes it even more confusing because we have Peacemaker, who is in the film in a cameo role, but was in the Suicide Squad in the old continuity. And at the end of the first, sorry for mild spoilers of Peacemaker, but the end of the first season of Peacemaker, the Justice League appear, but you see them silhouetted. Yeah, most of them, but they're meant to look like the Justice League of that timeline. So it does leave you wondering, what are they going to pull in? What are they not going to pull in? Why not recast everyone? I know James Gunn obviously did Peacemaker, but it's why not just keep that off on its own? But then at the end of Shazam 2, the characters from Peacemaker show up to come get Shazam because they're building a team. It's just
Wonder Woman showed up in Shazam 2.
Right. So it creates some questions. I think if you're going to start from scratch, I'm okay with that. If we're starting from scratch, and that's the decision we're making, then it needs to start from scratch. But yeah, to answer the question, who knows what they're going to do with Waller, because I think they also said that like this is technically the first real start of the DCU, but there was also Creature Commandos, which is technically
Right.
within this James Gunn universe. But then they also said that Blue Beetle, because that one didn't really tie in with anything else, may appear in the DCU
I've
too.
heard this
So
too. It's feeling pretty muddled, isn't it? And it's just highly convenient he happened to, of course, keep anything involving his wife's character around.
right.
Peacemaker. Oh, okay. All right. Next round of discussion and questions. One, we've already touched on which supporting character stood out the most. Mr. Terrific, Green Lantern, Lois, Crypto, Hawk Girl. You already know my answer, so I'm not gonna.
I think we all have the same one. I think if
Mr.
there was a
Terrific.
takeaway that we can at least agree on here for sure, is that Mr. Terrific was handled very well. I was so happy with the way they handled him, and it compared to like the comic book version. Like this for me feels like, yes, they got him right. It's like, and I would say for the most part, I felt that way about all the characters, but because he has like some big moments in the film as well, like that badass action sequence that kind of reminded me of like one of the scenes from Guardians with
the
Yondu.
arrow.
Yeah. So that was
Exactly. Cool. Yeah. So I have a question. I don't know much about Mr. Terrific. I don't even know if I remember him at all from the comics. But and I kept wanting to call him Mr. Fantastic, and I know that was not right. Anyway, because he was fantastic. Someone said, because I had indicated in a discussion somewhere, like in a comment, that I really liked Mr. Terrific. He was my favorite part, and then someone answered that they didn't like his portrayal because they felt like it was racist. Can you guys explain to me?
I'm sorry, that who was racist?
That the portrayal of Mr. Terrific was kind of racist. I don't understand. I don't. What am I missing?
It sounds like somebody's just throwing silly.
I mean,
silly
I
stuff
truly
out.
like. I didn't know because like I didn't know if like maybe you guys would know what in the heck this. Did he behave in a certain way that seemed not?
I don't think so.
mean,
There was nothing about the movie that felt that way for me, for that character, or for any character really, but for that character.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was like, the only thing I could think of is if they might have felt the character was acting in a stereotypically black way, but I didn't necessarily get that from it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's a little odd for me.
Oh, thank you, Christian.
For that. Not racist for a second, and
yeah, I wasn't sure. I couldn't speak to it because I had no idea. I mean, I didn't pick up anything overt. I loved his performance, and yeah, when that fight happened, I was like, please, let's just have a Mr. Terrific movie.
And I'm really glad for him that it's like, sorry to cut you off, but I'm really glad that it seems to be something that people are enjoying, at least his portrayal. Like maybe we will get a Mr. Terrific movie, or just
he's
more
like the
with
unifying
him.
factor.
Right. Well,
because
that same actor, Eddie Gathegi, he was in the X-Men First Class, and he plays it was so silly, but he plays a character that's like essentially meant to be able to like he can turn into whatever kind of thing so that he can survive, essentially, like he can whatever he needs to turn his body into, like ice or whatever, like he's capable
like
of.
Mystique
can just like change her outlook. He changes like his actual composition of his body will become whatever it is to like survive a situation. He can turn into like the character of Darwin. Yeah, he can turn into a stone. He can turn into some sort of chemical. He can adapt to whatever. And then he just gets like exploded in the movie, like and that's that, and he's dead. And he pretty much said that he was told he was going to come back in Days of Future Past. And then they never called him for Days of Future Past, and so he never got the chance to play that character more. But I thought that was such like a lost opportunity. I mumbled through my words there, but I think you understand what I was trying to say.
D, what was that all about?
Because as soon as he started, I knew he was talking about, and that is something that
I thought you were fainting for a second. I was like, "Is D okay?"
I mean, it makes me want to faint. That's how painful it is. But yeah, it just to me, the optics of it just were not great. I mean, optics aside, it just was dumb. Like if you've established rules, how can you undo the same rules you just established for the character? I just thought it was BS, honestly. And it's just kind of one of those things that, even though I don't come back to X-Men First Class a whole lot, it is one of those sore points that just I cannot get beyond, like, whenever I do watch it, or even when I think about it.
Okay. We've talked about Rachel Brosnahan. Dee, do you have any specific feelings about Rachel or David in these roles?
All I will say is that what I'll say about David Cornsweet is that I was introduced to him in, I believe it was Ryan Murphy who created it, but there's a series on Netflix called Hollywood. And it's kind of like, obviously set in the golden age of Hollywood. And what was really interesting about it is that he, as well as some other characters, it was kind of exposing, at least a part of the story, was exposing like the casting couch and some of the things involved in certain people's ascendance into fame and relevance, and the movie industry and so on and so forth. And so he was one of those characters. And I remember kind of thinking, which was weird, because I couldn't tell, I'm not trying to be funny, but I couldn't tell if his character was supposed to be a bad actor, or if his acting was bad, or if he was intentionally playing the character as a bad actor. So I just remember it being kind of a bizarre thing. And the thing that stood out to me was that all of the elder characters were like the standouts, but all like the younger, hopeful ingenue characters were just kind of like, eh. And then the finale was horrendous. But that was kind of my introduction to him. Rachel, I wasn't sure if that was right or not, but she is the one who starred in the Marvelous Miss Maisel. Mrs. Maisel, and I never had the chance to see that. And it looked like something that would be up my alley, but I just never had the chance to see it. So I'm familiar with them in that way, but this is probably my first big screen experience with any of them in a more like distinctive way.
Okay. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, I had to mute my mic because the dogs decided to let everybody know someone had walked in the door. And then when I did that, StreamYard did something funky, so I wasn't sure if everything was all right. Anthony, I'm assuming that you liked both of them very well in the role.
Yeah, I mean, for me, they really fit the characters, not only in look, but in terms of just like their vibes. Yeah, definitely on the flip side from you guys there, but I really enjoy them. But this was kind of like similar with D. This is kind of my first real outing with them. My only experience with them was with Rachel was earlier this year in The Amateur with I'm having a brain fart right now, but she plays the wife who gets killed, and it's the reason that what's it, Rami Malek was in that film The Amateur, where his wife gets killed.
That's right, that was her. Oh, I totally see. She's one of those actresses is just like, like
but
she doesn't.
To be fair, she's in the movie for like 3 seconds.
She's not in there much. Like, there's some flashback stuff.
That was my only experience with her until this. And then with David, I've only had 2 experiences with him. The first one was in Pearl a few years ago, where he plays the theater tech, like the guy who plays the movies at the movie theater that she ends up falling in love with, kind of, and then kills at the end of the movie. I saw memes this last weekend too, as like the only person to kill Superman, and it was just a bunch of pictures of Pearl. And then in last year's Twisters, the sequel to Twisters, he was in that. So those were my only 2 experiences with him. And so, yeah, this was my first, I guess, real time seeing him play like a character with like significance, and same for Rachel Brosnahan. Like, I thought that she was just throwaway, and she was just fodder in The Amateur. It looks like she came in for a day. But yeah.
Okay. My first exposure to her was in a movie that I've completely forgotten the title of, and she played someone whose husband like got taken out by these bad people, and she had this kid with her or something like that. I don't even remember the name of it. I remember watching the screener of it. I did a review. Can't tell you the name. That was my first exposure to her because she was the main character and she has an unusual name. Mm-hmm. But I've already made my feelings clear on both of these actors in these. I'm just like, I'm so down on this movie. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. The other thing I was going to say is, to Anthony's point, I apparently had seen him in other things. I totally forgot about Pearl, and I forgot about Twisters. So yeah. So that's 3 different occasions I was familiar
I have
with.
never seen Pearl. So I didn't even know he was in that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and
It's a
in
great movie.
Twister, I don't like the character of Pearl, so I stayed away. But I've heard it's good. Okay, the suit, you guys. I've already explained what I think about it. What do you guys think?
You want to go first, D?
No, you can go ahead.
All right, all right. Yeah, I would say that the suit wasn't my favorite in comparison to like Henry Cavill's, or even Tyler Hecklin or Hoechlin.
Hoechlin?
Oh,
Yeah,
hockey. Yeah.
yeah, who plays him on the which is very inspired by the Man of Steel outfit. I think I had gotten used to the no undies on the superheroes, in general. Begs the question now: is our DCU Batman going to be rocking the trunks? I'm curious. I'm curious to see. Because if that's the case, then we gotta have Robin out there in solo tidy whitey material. Like that, because if we're going
No.
classic. But jokes aside, I do agree. Like, I don't mind that they brought the trunks back. I don't, because while it's goofy, I am really kind of like a stickler sometimes when like I want to see these comic books just brought to life in live action. And if they feel cartoony, that's okay with me. I'd love something like, Dee brought up the Batman earlier. I love the Batman. I want the Batman to exist. I like the darker, gritty. That's why one of my favorite comic book movies ever is the Dark Knight and that trilogy in general. So, and I love Man of Steel. So I'm all for reinventing these characters in like darker ways for sure, anytime. But at the same time, I fully embrace the cheese of it. And since I would say majority of my intake of Superman has been in them damn trunks, especially in like the cartoons or video games. It's just like, hey man, we're rocking the trunks. With that said, though, I do agree with what you said, Sin. I think that there's a lot of great images and stuff of David like looking pretty good in the gym, like he got
Right.
nice and bulky, and the suit it doesn't feel like it really allows him to show the muscles that he's worked on. And instead it does kind of have like this kind of bulky padded look. With all that said, though, I didn't hate it. Like, I just thought that the suit wasn't great compared to other ones. But like I would say the best looking on screen Superman with the trunks for me is the Brandon Routh one in Superman Returns.
Okay.
I thought that captured like a look of the OG with Christopher Reeves, while also kind of sleeking it up a little bit for the modern day, but still having the little trunk action. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the suit.
I didn't even like the shade of blue. It
All
almost
right.
looked like Carolina Tar Heels blue. Like, what the heck are you doing? And some of in the poster, they have darkened the blue on his suit. They've made it look almost like the bluish color of the Man of Steel suit. And like, that's false advertising, y'all. Okay. Thoughts on the flying and the action sequences? I thought the flying sequences looked god awful with his fishbowl face. I hated every moment that it showed him flying. That just did not work for me. And the scene where he's tackling someone on the football field, I had seen it slowed down, and his arm looked like, it's because I guess the lens that they were using, and just, I don't think it's flattering at all. What do y'all think? Anthony?
Well, I want to hear Dee's thoughts on the suit, because I don't think we
Okay.
heard his
Oh, that's
thoughts on
right.
the
That's
suit.
right. We didn't.
Oh,
Sorry.
so one thing I'll agree with is that much like I believe it's Kumail Nanjiani, who was in Eternals. Like, I saw like pictures of where he had gotten ripped for his role in that film, and then there was never a point in the film where you actually see it like at any point. So it's just like,
Right.
why was this necessary? So, and the thing is, like, there are different ways to obviously design the suit with any superhero. So I'm not saying it has to be like skin tight, completely bulging, although some people would probably prefer that. But it's just like something about the color scheme and the aesthetic. It made it look, and I understand, again, comic book origins, but certainly there is a way to lean into the comic book origins while still allowing it to look somewhat form-fitting, or something that would assist him in fighting crime or taking down these bad guys. And there was never really a point where I thought that. It just was kind of bizarre looking to me.
Okay. All right. The flying stuff, the action stuff.
It was a no for me personally. It was again, it was just kind of jarring. It was kind of bizarre. I understand taking risks and doing things from a different perspective, but it honestly made my head hurt. And it just was not the most flattering of angles either.
No.
I was just like,
And he's cute too, and it just made him sorry. It's
you're good.
My turn.
yeah, your turn. I guess he's done.
Yeah. In terms of the flying sequences in the action, I loved all that. It felt fun, visually cool. I will agree, though, the up close like shots, I think it was the lens they were using. There was just a couple of moments that made him look cross-eyed. But outside of that, I didn't mind it. It definitely wasn't on the negative side of that. But there were just a couple of moments where he would like look off to the side, and I just think because of the lens they were using, it did kind of give it this fishbowl look to it that just made his eyes look a little cross-eyed. That was the only thing I thought. But outside of that, all the rest of in terms of like slowing something down, I think most movies you can always find little details that that are messy in a movie here and there with if you slow something down or you catch somebody in the background, like the dude with jeans on in Gladiator that's in the corner,
right.
or
yeah.
one of my favorite ones from the last few years that I can never see the movie without ever noticing it is in Star Wars: The Last Jedi. There's a scene which I think most people love. It's the Rey and Kylo fighting all those Praetorian guards in the Red Room, and there's a dude that has two things in his hands as Rey is coming to him, and then he grabs her, and he should have something in the other hand to stab her, but it just disappears. It's just not there in that shot. And every time I watch it now, it's just so obvious. He literally had two things in his hands and suddenly only has one because they were clearly CGI in there and one of them was removed. So all that to say, I find if you slow things down in most movies, you can find something. But in terms of just seeing it in IMAX and flying around on the action, I enjoyed it. Those close-up shots in the face, little cross-eyed cat moments, but it didn't ruin it for me.
Okay, well, at least it didn't ruin it for you. But yeah, it was just kind of like another notch against the film for me. And it's weird to say that because, like I said, I did not despise this movie. I didn't 1-star this movie, but I can't also 10-star or 8 or even 7 or 6 star this movie. But I didn't hate it. That's what's so weird. I was just, it's odd. Okay, so some comments that I want to address. We have a very nice super chat from Latino Slant. Look at this panel, so proud. Thank you, chat, for being here for our debut stream. Thank you, Paulie. Yes,
thanks, Paulie.
This has been a lot of fun. Thank you to everybody that's here and engaging in the comments. And we've got another super chat. It's a bird, it's a plane. Oh, Paulie's late on the train. Chat. Assuming Gunn had cast chat. Assuming Gunn had wrote them right. Which version of Justice League you like more? Do you mean the Justice League that we've gotten? You talking about is it Joss Whedon versus Snyder? Is that what he's referring to? Or comics? I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I don't think I'm catching on to the question. But thank you for the super chat. And everybody please like and subscribe to Latino Chant Latino Chant.
Or if he is referring
Latino
to
Slant, if you haven't already. If he's referring to what?
Between Snyder and Gunn.
It's tough to say, right? Because we haven't really seen the Justice League proper. If we're going based on the Justice characters that they set up in this movie for the future, then I'm definitely going with the Snyder cut, because that was a full-fledged Justice League.
Right.
But I like what I'm seeing personally. I like what I'm seeing, and I'm curious to see when this is all kind of brought together, especially with Batman, mainly because I know James Gunn wants to bring the Bat family in. That's something I've always wanted to see done in live action. Batman and Robin was not a good example of that. And no. I want to see Batman, Nightwing, the multiple versions of Robin, or, Red Hood, or, in with Catwoman and with Batgirl and the whole shaboodle. Now there's obviously in more recent years the Arkham Knight, and I just want to see all these characters existing in Gotham instead of it always being Batman and maybe a Robin. So I'm excited for that because a future Justice League movie with the Bat family involved could just be chef's kiss if they do it right. But the cartoons and the video games are only ones that are able to do it right, and the comics, never the live action movies.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's kind of hard to pull those sorts of things off sometimes.
I thought they were going to do it with Batgirl a few years ago that they brought Michael Keaton in for. They filmed the whole movie.
Oh yeah,
They
that's
apparently
right.
they threw it in the trash can. I guess they've said it was unwatchable, but I find that hard to believe because we've released some real garbage before. So I feel like fans should still be able to see it. The fact that they filmed a whole Batman movie with Michael Keaton as a Batman to a Batgirl and having Brendan Fraser in there as Firefly as the villain, and they just have that movie sitting somewhere is criminal.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with WB. Okay, so got some more comments. Hold on a moment. Superman is good and bad at the same time. Yeah, kinda. Yeah, well, I don't think it's all that good, so that's the thing. Okay, Mr. Terrific's TV series would be great. Yes, I agree. I would be down for that. I really like what Gunn did with Peacemaker. I don't like the idea of him being at the helm of DC though. That's the thing. I just feel like he's got a certain style that doesn't fit well with this type of some of these bigger ones, like I've already said. Surprised no one read the prequel book to the movie. Superman Welcome to Metropolis. It has introductions to things in the movie. I didn't know anything about the prequel.
Yeah, I didn't know it existed.
I knew it existed, but yeah, I didn't read it beforehand. I was hoping the movie would do enough, but and I think it did for me clearly. But I would like to go back and read that now.
Oh, I'm glad you loved it, Professor.
Hell yeah, brother! We got to stick together.
We don't want Anthony to feel like he's all
I'm getting
alone
double teamed here. If you like the movie, leave some comments down below.
I didn't mind the flying scenes, but they did a close up on the S 3 times. Once was enough. I didn't even like the S. I thought it looked terrible. Sorry. Thought I had unstarred that one. And here we have my son joining in. Sin will always be for Henry Cavill. And Last Jedi was just fan fiction. Okay, maybe because I saw it in 3D, the fight scenes looked good to me. Very comic panel-like. Did you guys see? I saw a clip of some theater where it had screens on the side.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, there's a few of those in the grand scheme of it, but yeah, I have seen that those theaters exist, which is pretty cool. Honestly, I've always wanted to see a movie in one of those. Essentially, it's like 4DX, but 5DX. You know, they take it to the next level.
Is that what that was? That was like a 4DX or something?
It's not a 4DX, but it's like it's something like that. But they also have screens on the side to kind of like absorb you a little bit more,
fully immerse you in.
There's very few of those theaters, but they do exist.
I think that might mess with my motion sickness tendencies. I don't know how well I would do with something like that. Latino Slant, on my way back home from this, nostalgia saved this. I think that's supposed to be nostalgia. Save the squirrels. Oh, I didn't realize that he hadn't seen it yet. I thought you'd already seen it, Basco. Okay, so something I forgot to bring up when we were talking about some of the characters. What did y'all think about Supergirl? I thought it was a terrible introduction.
I thought it was kind of an odd introduction. I will say I like Millie Alcock, so it was like, oh, it was nice to see her like in that sense, as the character. But it was one of those things where they were trying to take this alternative approach to the character by having her be like sloshed and drunk. I'm like, oh, okay, and I'm out. You can take risks, you can make changes, but some of those things land for people. And for me, I get what they were trying to do, but it didn't really land for me.
Yeah, same.
What about you? I've had this conversation with a bunch of people recently about that specifically. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't for me like the most like, oh, this is the introduction Supergirl I want. I know what comic lines they're pulling from to kind of tell this iteration of Supergirl, but I mean,
she's been this way before because
very few comic issues where she's like, or like lines where she's a little bit more wild, a little bit more crazy, but more often than not, she's like the classic stoic. I'm assuming we're gonna build to that, right? Like, but I think that was a touch of James Gunn's humor. along with what's it called? Just maybe pulling from this storyline where she isn't the Supergirl that we know her to be just yet, you know? Um, so I'm curious. I'm not actually familiar with that actress either. Like I know who she is because I know she's in that Game of Thrones spinoff show, which I've not watched. So this was like my first real introduction to her. So, you know, I was kind of lukewarm on it. I like because it's so small and it was just nice to see the character. I'm like, all right, I'm excited to see what they do. But I can't say I was like, oh my God, Supergirl. Yeah, I was just more like, yeah, all right, cool. Like I can see what I know where they're pulling from, and then I can feel that James Gunn humor to it. Let's see what they do. I'm assuming somewhere in the next few times we see her, she'll be a little bit more in line with the Supergirl we know. But it seems like they're going to probably go the route of like, you know, messy hero that underestimates her powers or like doesn't utilize her powers to the full extent and is kind of forced to, and then, you know, has to kind of straighten up, you know. But I didn't hate it, but yeah, it's not my favorite rendition of Supergirl. And there's so many, right? Because like you think about the old show from back in the day, it was, you know, more classic Supergirl than even the one that they did in recent years from the CW. A little bit more classic Supergirl, and then they kind of did something new with her in the Flash, which is a little darker, and then, you know, now that's right out the window.
That's completely gone.
So, you know, I'm curious to see what they do. I'm struggling. This whole time I've been talking, my brain has been. I'm just trying to remember the comic issue that they're pulling from, which I know they also announced. I can see the imagery in my head, but I can't remember the name. But either way, I'm hopeful. But I can't say I'm necessarily like, you know, it's definitely not the thing I'm talking about when I'm thinking about the movie.
I just was a little surprised that Crypto ended up not being Superman's dog. Because I thought he was supposed to be Superman's dog, and then no, it's just her. She came to pick him up because he'd been dog sitting the whole time. Okay, what y'all think of Crypto?
I loved Crypto.
Okay.
I thought they made him so much fun in the movie. I am curious to see if they lean us in the direction of making him more Crypto from like the comics, you know, like we've obviously seen the character on the big screen in the animated film where The Rock played him, but there are other renditions in like the old cartoons and stuff like that where Crypto speaks. So I am curious to see if they, you know, eventually lean into that or if he's just going to be like a big silly dog.
Big goof, yeah.
Either way, I was just happy to see the character on the big screen. Like, you know, it's like a big screen in live action. You know, he's like such a big part of Superman that the fact that we haven't had like, you know, we've had him in like some live action TV shows, but like, you know, the fact that we hadn't had him in a movie of this scale yet was like, okay, like let's get this happening. So I'm just happy that he's in the movie.
I'm glad that his off the chain sort of behavior ended up at least contributing in some helpful way to the story. Goodness, this dog is wild. He needs some training. Go get him trained. What do you think about him, D?
Yeah, as someone who has never outside of maybe like old school cartoons, I think it was like, as Anthony was saying, it was interesting like seeing him on the big screen. And I guess it depends. Like I've seen obviously different, if I'm not mistaken, I've seen him in like different forms or breeds, I should say. So it was interesting that they went with this specific one. That's probably not what I would have expected. But yeah, I will say that was like an element that was, you know, obviously I enjoy dogs. And so it's kind of one of those things where even if you're not into something, seeing an animal or any kind of, you know, dog, cat, whatever, that's something you can enjoy. So for me, it worked for the most part.
Okay. I didn't hate him. Didn't fully love him because I was like, I know what you're doing. You're just trying to manipulate my feelings with this dog.
Right.
But anyway, whatever. I'm going to address some comments. Yes, there is no Paulie here today. He's traveling, so he couldn't be here, but, you know, hopefully on the next one or some of the others. So, yeah. And then you never see Paulie and Superman in the same place. That's right. His secret is out. I haven't seen it yet, but I think they did Henry dirty. Yes, I absolutely do. I am still extremely salty about that whole thing. And like I've said before, I was not going to watch this movie until all of this happened.
Mhm.
So I did not love Superman, but I didn't hate it either. I found it to be an odd curiosity, but it's not going to be a one-off. We probably will get 10 to 20 Gundy scenes. Oh, I
Yeah.
hope not. I hope not. Let's
I
see.
hope we do. I hope we do.
Is there
Listen, and
introduction? Sorry,
I'll
go
say
ahead.
that real quick. That the only reason I say that is because whatever gripes of like the MCU with like kind of being like hit or miss in the modern day, I just feel like DC has never had that.
Haven't really
That
gotten a footing.
No.
Yeah, and when they did the DC EU, they rushed to the Justice League so fast, and I love these characters. Like I have so many fond memories of staying up late at night watching the cartoons, or staying late at night with a lamp next to bed reading these comic issues, or like getting the new one, or playing the video games and just like being so lost in this world. And we've had so many good random installments and things, but it's just like that. I want to see a universe of live action films that like I can look back on 10 years from now and be like, yes, they did it. Even if it's for a portion, even if they have their version of Endgame and then it's like, all right, now the movies are all over the place. I would just love to look and be like, wow, we had like a really strong path of stuff. So I'm really hopeful that with James Gunn and Peter Safran at the top, that vision can kind of lead to something.
We shall see. My wife now wants a second dog. Thanks, Superman. Well, it didn't generate that spark in me, thank goodness, because we already have 3. So, not a fan of Supergirl in general, but Sasha Calle's Kara Zor-El in Flash movie was amazing. She won me over with her emotions on screen. I rooted for her to live. I wasn't super impressed with her Supergirl. She was fine as far as the acting portion of it, but I didn't really connect with her. But I know she was a favorite of a lot of people when that movie came out. Okay, so the sort of elephant-ish in the room. There's been all this media furor over James Gunn and the messaging in here, or the perceived messaging. And so yes, I saw this movie, as we all know. But I feel like I'm having to defend the movie when I go on certain comments on Twitter and have to, bust the notion that certain things that were claimed to have been said were never said. This whole thing about the truth, justice, and the American way being changed to truth, justice, and the human way. People have been passing it around they changed it, it's this, and I'm not going to see the movie now because of that. That never even happens in the film. It's not even in the film at all. The whole sort of immigration narrative that was claimed to be in the film, I guess if you want to, you could sort of see that in there when he and Lex are having their kind of showdown at the end, and Lex says, "You're an alien." And Superman's, "I'm just as human as you. I love, I fear, I laugh, I have hope," that sort of thing. Maybe you could see that. I didn't really. So I feel like those sorts of narratives have been kind of ginned up by the media to just create. You know what the media does. But
Yes.
what do you guys think about, like, did you have this in your brain when you went in watching it, thinking that it might be something that was going to be a little heavy-handed in certain messaging? I didn't really pick up on that personally. D?
Oh, me first. Okay.
First.
So the thing is, for me, so no, I did not go in thinking that. And I will say, to your point, Sin, it's social media and just media in general. But especially with social media, I've seen a lot of situations in the past where somebody takes a clip from something and they say like, "This is what they're trying to do. This is what they're talking about," and not that it really changes my mind, because if I'm going to see something, I'm going to see something for myself. But it's all the more important that I do that, because the scene was taken completely out of context, and what they were saying, like the big, the grand scheme of things, it was nowhere near what they were trying to say. And then people were taking it and running with it. So that's just the thing that I find, misinformation, disinformation, it's just going to be a rampant thing. But going in, and also, I guess going in, I didn't really think anything about it, because I'm just kind of used to there being just conversations about that.
Noise.
Yeah, noise. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Whether I'm focused on it or not, it's just like there. But I will say for me, I do think there has to be some awareness, whether people like it or not. I feel like there should be some awareness that a lot of the things people complain about as far as messaging and things like that, this has been going on for decades. And like a lot of these stories that seem to be something, fairly simple and straightforward, there are things buried deep in all of them. I even saw one, I don't even know which one, I don't know the number, but there was some issue or volume of Superman taking down Klan members. So like things about war and so it's always been there. Now, if people want to talk about maybe the way that it's handled or the execution, I understand that. But for some people, it's almost like, how is this here? How can we be talking about this? And it's just like, this is not new. So I just think there needs to be a separation between maybe what the real conversation is and what people are using to kind of blow up into this, what seems to me faux outrage about things that are not really accurate.
Right. Agreed. Anthony?
Yeah, I think for me, and I'll just be blunt and straightforward about it, I think people who, number one, there's people just adding stuff that's not actually happening in the movie, but full throttle. I mean, if you are a Superman fan and you're upset about an illegal immigrant, illegal alien storyline or any element of that, then I would question whether or not you've ever seen or read or done anything with Superman in the past, because that's been a theme. It has been, it's kind of like with the X-Men, like prejudice is the central theme of that, like whether it's race or, people like the gays back in the day when the X-Men were being created, like there's prejudice that's a part of that storyline. So, it's always been made to kind of be a part of the commentary. And a Superman has always kind of had that kind of commentary. In all this, I was reminded of a scene from Smallville from back in the day. And I was talking to my wife about it. And there's an episode where Clark has like a friend who's, I believe like ICE is coming for him or something like that. And he pretty much asked his mom if they can hide his friend. I can't remember the friend of his name, Jose or something, to like, if we can hide him. And she's like, I can't hide like an illegal immigrant, and he's like, I'm an illegal alien too, like, so it was kind of like this storyline has been a part of Superman before. Like they utilize that part of him, that he's from somewhere else and he is an alien, as very on the nose, commentary at times. So while I agree, like I think the movie is not making that claim in any sort of like strong way, the way that people are making it. Yeah. I also think, on the other hand, if there is that subtext, I question whether you've been paying attention to what Superman is about at its core.
Kind of his full origin story.
Right. So it's like, I think it's silly. It's kind of like when people, again, I've heard people talk, I bring up the X-Men. Like I've had people be like, oh, like politics and X-Men. It's like, that's literally the whole thing. Like or politics in Star Wars. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's like these things are there and they've been there and they're part of the commentary. And so while I don't think this movie is in any way making like a statement, in the way that people are claiming, again, it's like, let's look at the character we're talking about and the history of stories and what they pulled from, what kind of commentary they've utilized this character to make, and ultimately it is really more about the fact that, we should care for our fellow man in general, no matter where you're from, and no matter what kind of walls are in our way. So I think it's silly, super silly. And I think people need to take an ice bath sometimes, I just need to relax.
So speaking of like Superman and where he came from, do you think that this balances like his alien origin and his human upbringing well? And what about that reveal about his parents? I was not expecting that.
I wasn't either.
His alien parents.
Right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I had mentioned, like, that was another point where I was kind of like, because I was waiting for like the gotcha, like, oh, he manipulated the footage and and it was like, no,
it was real. They really did say this, but it doesn't even mesh with the first part of their message. That's why it's just like feels a little bit tonally off to me, even though I think it's kind of an interesting twist. It's just like, but that's like completely counter to what they said earlier. I'm so confused.
Yeah. I thought it was intriguing. I don't see again. So Superman has not been a huge. He hasn't been really at the crux of my comic book experiences, especially when I was much younger. But I feel like maybe it was more emphasized in other films. I'm still kind of thrown by Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper.
I was like, okay.
I know. I was like, wait,
Very
is
bizarre.
that Bradley Cooper?
Right. And so that was kind of odd. And like I said, I don't know if that was like intentional, kind of leaning into camp, or we were supposed to, like, I don't know what reaction we were supposed to have after that, to be honest. But yeah, like I would have preferred a little bit more from that element. I understand like the bigger, I guess the more important aspect is how he enmeshes himself in just everyday life, Daily Planet and all of that. But I could have taken a little bit more, because I love seeing like, the lair and so on and so forth. Maybe lair isn't the best word, but the fortress, whatever you call it, I thought that was really interesting.
What about you, Anthony?
Well, it's funny. There's a comment that just popped in from Ryan Lands.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and highlight it now. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm of that mentality where I do think there's going to be something that comes up saying that was like not the full translation, and that obviously, because even for me, like, while there's been different iterations of this character and his family, like more often than not, they weren't sending him to do this, that, and the third.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So it is one of those things where it's like it could be a fresh interpretation. Maybe it's pulling from something I'm not remembering, and that's totally okay too. I do wish we had spent a little bit more time with Ma and Pa Kent. I was actually surprised that they cast characters or actors that were so old for the role. Not not to be ageist in any way, but just for the they're going to continue on these roles for a long period of time. I was surprised that they didn't like maybe go with a slightly younger Ma and Pa Kent. That's not a big issue whatsoever, but it made me wish we spent a little bit more time with them, because it just kind of feels like like these kind of goofy older parents popping in for a little bit, and then that
when
one
she was
nice
talking
scene
on the cell phone,
right?
She leaned over,
right. I feel like they weren't my favorite interpretations of Ma and Pa Kent. But what I can say is that I thought the moment, like you mentioned earlier, with the father was really, really touching and stuff like that. I thought it was funny that his mom was, cleaning his boots, so like there was moments with them. That was definitely an element I wish was a little cooked up a little bit more, but I didn't mind it because it wasn't really like the central focus of the film. But, it goes back to what I was saying before. My biggest gripe on the film being that it's a little overstuffed, like that. Those are those moments where it's like, okay, we do have a lot going on. We probably didn't need every character and its mother. We probably didn't need there to be like, I like the whole element around Ultraman, and of course anybody who's familiar with Superman knows what they're teasing, with that element moving forward.
Can you tell us, please, because I don't know?
Yeah, well, they're definitely setting up Bizarro, who's like the essentially just like the anti-superhero or anti-Superman. He's just like he's being sent off into that dark realm. If he comes back the way we should expect him to be, he should just be Superman, but kind of a bozo, but also just like rage driven and like got like crackly, like messed up skin, and he's just like kind of like got like a vendetta against Superman, and he's just like essentially in the comics at times too, he tricks the world into thinking that like, oh, Superman looks weird, but like that looks like Superman, and he does terrible things in the name of Superman. They're clearly setting up Bizarro up. Of course, I knew as soon as Ultraman's mask was like all like messed up, I was like, he's gonna take it off. It's gonna be him.
Okay.
And then once they were having that final fight, and then they were like, one of them was gonna get sent to like the black hole. I go, of course. I looked over at my buddy Robbie, the Big Rob Theory here on YouTube. I looked over at him, and we both were like, yeah, Bizarro. Like, that's clearly what they're setting up. So I'm excited for that, because that's another big Superman villain that's never gotten live action treatment. But yeah, I forgot what we were saying before that. But in general, like, I think there was too many villains too. Like having the engineer in there, like that's really, I think, more than maybe setting up for the Authority, which is another group of characters that they are setting up a movie for. So if I'm not mistaken, maybe they're kind of like, we're using her to kind of tee that up. I don't know, but I think there was too many villains, too many characters, and at times the Ma and Pa Kent thing, I think, kind of got like pushed to the side.
Yeah. Okay. Well, because I don't know so much about comic books, it's been decades since I've actively read. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I miss out on, these little references. I had no clue. I had heard of Ultraman, had no clue. Like, I don't know if they even changed him up. Like, is Ultraman really a clone of Superman in the comics?
Pretty much.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so some more questions. Would you recommend this to someone who's never liked Superman? Well, I don't know. I wouldn't
I would say yes, but I
personally.
would say if you're not familiar with Superman, this is probably not the place to jump in.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it does kind of, it's kind of like Spider-Man Homecoming. It kind of says, hey, you know the origin. We're gonna skip that for you. Same with the Batman. I think you can jump into the Batman and still enjoy that one a little bit more for sure. Like it does enough with its own story, but it's like, it's like, hey, we're not gonna give you like the true origin, like how this person became this person. And Superman just plops you right into like him getting his you know,
He got
lower
his ass
region
kicked.
smacked,
Yeah.
he got his ass kicked, like straight up, like right at the very start, so like, and the idea is I believe that he's been at it for a few years already, all the
Yeah,
characters
3
kind of
years.
know each other. So
Yep.
like, yeah, for me as like a fan of the character and for you guys who's familiar with the character, you can plop in and you got the extra context. But for, people who maybe aren't familiar with Superman at all, like this should never be your first Superman movie. Like that's what I would say, like you should at least like consume some other Superman stuff first.
Yeah. What about you, D? What do you think?
So I have to detail, not extensively, but so here's where the problem comes in for me. And I, obviously I'm good. I can admit to bias when I have it. And much like Anthony mentioned, I mean, like he mentioned, but maybe in a different way. But I say it all the time, but my general introduction to superheroes, it was Batman the Animated Series, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, and then Batman Returns. It was just like back to back to back. I was like, I love this. Like I'm here for all of this. I can take this world and I'm cool with this. And then on Marvel, even though I didn't know the difference at the time, X-Men. I felt like both those, I could take all these villains, all these characters together, and you can toss the rest, not knocking them, but it's just like they were so interesting in and of themselves that I really didn't necessarily need a connection to the rest of them. So I think as a result of that, partly because of the stakes that you mentioned, Sin, the investment with Batman, but also how interesting the villains were. How, I remember my mom, in her parlor or front living room, she had all these plants. So for there to be a villain named Poison Ivy,
Yeah.
he was playing. I was like, oh wow! I thought that was the most interesting thing ever. But yeah, so with that being said, that was my introduction. But I don't know how or why, but Superman was just never a part of my experience. I never saw any of the original Superman films. On Super Friends, Aquaman was my favorite, and even Bizarro I thought was more interesting than Superman. And I didn't get to see Man of Steel. I saw Batman versus Superman. Had mixed feelings about it. And then I forgot. I also played at one point Superman 64, which is easily one of the worst video games ever made.
Anthony knows.
Yes,
that is a diabolical game. Like the creators of that game should be in prison right now.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
So I think having all that in mind going into this, it probably isn't doing much to really enhance the character with the experience I've had. And even unlike you, Sin, I don't even have the, even though I enjoyed him, I enjoyed Henry Cavill's interpretation. The only issue is I wanted a little bit more personality, but personality for me doesn't mean like jokey, over the top stuff, just a little bit more than just this, know what I'm saying? Yeah, just stoic. I understand why they did that, but I'm like, just a little bit more. But yeah, I would say with all that being said, it might be a hard sell for someone who really does not like, and I can't say I don't dislike Superman, but I just think the layers that I was exposed to with X-Men and Batman and those universes, this just doesn't click with me in the same way. But if it's someone who can still appreciate a comic book film regardless, I think they may enjoy it for that element, and they may be able to put aside the fact that they're not big fans of Superman.
So I take it that, Anthony, you are very optimistic about Gunn being at the helm.
Right.
And D, you're probably kind of with me. not super, not overly. Is that accurate
It
to
it
say?
it is like there's still a mustard seed of hope that I'm trying to hold on to.
That's a really tiny. That's
Exactly.
tiny.
It is. But I'm trying to, because I never want to completely shut the door. Because who knows? It could be something I enjoy along the way. If you had told me that I would enjoy a series based around Peacemaker, I would have called you a straight up liar. And that was easily one of the best TV series
Right?
I'd seen
Yeah.
in a long time. So I'm saying like he has it in the Suicide Squad as well. I enjoyed his version way more than the original Suicide Squad
Same.
they did. So he has the potential, like he has the eye. I think it just comes down to how he chooses to handle it. Because I think when he locks in the right way and he doesn't get too distracted, it can be something really brilliant, really enjoyable, really on point. But it's just all about execution. I just don't want him to get lost in the sauce, and that's kind of what I'm worried about, considering how this film kind of went in that regard.
Yeah, I agree. Y'all said it well. I'm going to address some comments, and then I have sort of like a last closing question ish. We'll see where the conversation goes after that. I also want to touch on some numbers about this movie for this weekend. So there's a comment I've started. I will address that when I get to that part of it. Okay, I understand Crypto's behavior is connected to her master, Kara. Is Crypto a girl? I thought Crypto was a boy. Is he a girl? I mean, is Crypto?
I've always known Crypto to be a boy, but
Okay,
maybe
that's what
there could be female versions of the character
maybe.
somewhere.
Okay, I don't think they even specifically say, but this comment is like owner, like dog. I don't blame the dog no more. So the dog's acting like completely nuts. It's because his human is nuts.
Yeah, I kind of picked up. I did think that element of it was interesting when I kind of saw her at the end. I was like, oh,
At the end, yeah. Oh, that's why the dog's so crazy. And the way he was like slamming her on the ground.
right.
Crazy dog.
Yeah.
Okay, Azteca Aguilar says comic book movies just aren't bringing anything new lately. It's the same old thing over and over again. Sometimes, maybe.
I will say it's hard to get past the formula. There are ways to do it, but ultimately there's a good guy, there's a bad guy. Which one? One of them has to lose. The bad guy usually loses, and it's really hard to subvert that. Which is why, for a lot of people, Infinity War was just kind of like, what? It was kind of a punch to the gut, so to speak. And so I understand we can't do stuff like that all the time, but I just think we have to find ways to subvert expectations and not fall into like what's typical for the genre, even though you also have comic book origins. Like it's a tough balance.
Yeah, agreed. No, I agree with this comment as well. Azteca, give me non-DC/Marvel comic book movies: Spawn, The Shadow, Invincible, etc. I am getting a little tired of the same main characters being just rehashed over and over. I want to see a Vixen movie. I want to see a Storm movie. I know Storm is big, but I want to see like movies about these little. I wouldn't mind seeing a Dazzler movie as long as it's not Taylor Swift in the part. Like I want to see some of these more obscure, like what Gunn did with not Suicide Squad, Guardians. Like what he did with them. I would really like to see more of those instead of just returning.
Right.
Batman, Superman. I don't know. It's feeling a little old.
And there are so many to pull from, and that's the thing. Like there's so many we haven't even begun to see, especially on the big screen. So it's just like take the opportunity,
Exactly. I mean, there's so much material there. Like, jeez. And we have a super chat. Thank you very much. He says, last question, what new director do you pick to direct a DC film like Batman? I picked James Cameron to do Batman, Teen Titans, or even Kingdom Come.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a good question. Mike Flanagan.
Right.
When I heard that Mike Flanagan was working on Clayface, I got so excited because I thought he was directing it. Now he's just writing it. I wish he was directing that. I feel like that would be such an interesting body horror kind of comic book film with Mike Flanagan, directing it. I'm excited that he's still the writer, and I'm sure he'll act as a producer or something like that. But man, I wish he was directing that film so bad. Yeah, it's tough, man. As far as just like a Batman movie, it's like I don't even know who I would pick at this point. Like I'd almost want to pick somebody like niche, right? But then it's like, do
Yeah.
you pull somebody from the indie world and then they kind of aren't really able to do their own thing
Right.
because they're doing like an IP or something? Like I don't know. It's really interesting. It's hard to narrow it down.
Guy who directed Boss Level, that would be he might could do, because I think he was a stunt coordinator or something too. That fella, I don't remember his name, but yeah, I think he might could do a good job. What about you, D? What do you
I was
think?
gonna say Lee Winnell. He did Upgrade and then The Invisible Man. The Invisible Man, yes. I think there's another film he did that I'm missing, but just from Upgrade, the way everything he did, and it was a low budget film, but it looked so so polished and so distinctive, and it was kind of like this small glimpse into the future, and it was done really well. So I would love to kind of see his take on a maybe semi-futuristic or just with this more modern, sleek, idea of Batman, because we've gotten kind of deep into the noir, gritty stuff. Not that I don't want to lose that, but I want to get more into like the sleeker, technological, all that kind of stuff. I'd like to see that.
Lee Winnell did The Wolfman
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
from this year.
well-
I was like, I know I know. Yeah, and some people really okay. I actually didn't hate Wolfman, but some people really, really did not like it at all.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't get a chance to see it, so it technically doesn't count for me. I've heard varying things, but yeah, I still think he would be a good choice.
Some more. Oh, that was the one I didn't mean to show yet. Batman is my favorite comic book character. He's definitely, as far as the guys, I think he's my favorite as well for the reason I already mentioned. He's human. He just has to use his brain power to do what he does, and of course, he's got money. His superpower is money. My favorite female character from when I was a child was Wonder Woman, and of course, I really loved Storm, and Vixen was really cool
yes,
too.
Storm, yeah.
Storm. Oh my gosh, I just still hate that Angela. I felt we got we got sort of kind of close to what Angela Bassett would have looked like as Storm in Black Panther 2 with that white hair. I was like, oh, my Storm.
Yeah. The only reason she didn't get to do it is because they. Now I don't know if it's a situation where they genuinely didn't want to pay her or they just didn't have the budget to afford her.
I've heard that it was like something along those lines.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is sort of my last closing-ish question before we dive into the other stuff like numbers. Where does this rank for you among other Superman films?
That's tough, right? Because it's like, are you counting animation as well? Or are we just talking live action? Because if we're talking live action, it's definitely better than the third and fourth film with Christopher Reeve, like easily, right?
Yeah.
And I would argue that it's even better than Superman Returns with Brandon Routh, which I like that film, but I don't think it's great. I don't know that it necessarily has that like iconic element that the original 1978 film does. So I maybe would still put that one above, though I think this film is maybe more fun to watch at times. But then Man of Steel is just such a cool, like different kind of Superman movie that really stands out. So I'd probably put that above this one. So I don't know if I really had to think about it. If we're just talking live action Superman, I'd probably put it somewhere in my maybe like number 3.
Okay. I was going to say top 3 maybe.
Yeah, maybe I'll put it like right at number 3, but with like I don't know. I feel like it would depend on the day, but top 3 works.
Okay. I don't know. Like for me, I haven't really thought about this too much. It definitely wouldn't be in the top because Man of Steel, yes. And I know Batman versus Superman is not technically a Superman only movie, but I'm counting that one. So It would be below that one. It would be below the Snyder cut, like basically all appearances of Superman.
Right.
And I don't know, I actually like Superman 2. Okay. It's a little darker. See how like I kind of gravitate towards the more darker-ish themes. But I don't know. This might rank below Superman 2, the original Superman, which I'm not even I can barely watch those Reeve ones anymore, y'all. They just don't.
Which ones?
The Christopher Reeve Supermans. They don't work for me.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you meant it was because of Christopher Reeve,
No. But that's sad too, right? I mean, that's horrible. But what I mean is like I'm not feeling that. When I was a kid,
yeah,
when I was a kid. I
Right.
liked it, but now I'm older, and it's kind of like how I felt when I had watched Batman Begins, and I'm like, I'm in a Batman mood. Let me go watch 1989 Batman, and I was like, oh gosh, this is too campy. I can't. So
Mm.
that's how kind of like the Christopher Reeve ones feel to me, but also this one felt that way too. That's why I said in my review, if you really like the Christopher Reeve ones, you will probably enjoy this. You know, if that's the interpretation of Superman that you like. So I don't know, maybe somewhere in the middle for me of all of those. What about you, D?
I completely forgot that I had seen Superman Returns also, which was like it was another film that really didn't do much to endear me to
Yeah.
Superman. And then, of course, I didn't realize at the time that it was like kind of a reboot follow up to, it was supposed to, I think, ignore 3 and 4, possibly.
Yeah.
It was supposed to skip at least
Yeah.
1 or 2 of those. And on top of me just kind of being on it, the director choosing not to do X-Men, the third X-Men film, doing this, and then Brett Ratner doing X3, you know, and how that turned out for both films, I was so aggravated. So I would definitely put this above that. I would say same as far as like all the Henry Cavill appearances. Those I would say are up there for me. But I would kind of say whenever I catch up with some of the other films, I can see this being more middling for me. Not terrible at all. Not one of those things I walked out feeling like, oh, this was just absolutely awful. But I just needed a little bit more of an investment and something to kind of pull me in. And I felt like Henry Cavill had that. So this is kind of missing that gravitas for me.
You're just a Snyder cultist.
Of course. Snyder Bros.
Well,
Okay.
I'll also say real quickly, if we are talking just like Superman appearances, because that's a little
Yep.
bit more specific.
I
I was
know,
going based on
yeah.
like solo Superman movies. Then yeah, I'd probably put like the Snyder cut above this as well. So that knocks it out the top 3, right? But then if I'm counting the animated
Superman,
stuff, I mean,
Oh.
specifically in the last 10 or 15 years, the New 52 adaptations of movies, I mean, those are some of the best DC movies ever made. And so yeah, I mean, this probably, the more I would think about that, if I had a whole list, this would probably get knocked down a little bit. But even then, I think in the live action world, this still would rank fairly high for me.
Well, I'm truly glad that you enjoyed it, Anthony. It would feel like a big echo chamber if all we did was just sit here and, you know, just rail against this movie.
Hey, listen, I'm happy to be the positive light. And, you know, despite your
We're
guys'
just the little clouds here.
Right. Well, despite the negativity on your guys' part a little bit more, you know, I feel okay sitting here where I'm at with the 90% Rotten Tomatoes and the over 4, you know, stars on Letterboxd. Like I'm, you know, I guess you could say I'm with the pack, but you know.
Yeah, you feel justified in what you feel. I know. I'm not buying those Rotten Tomato scores though, y'all. Come on, no. I'm not. Something shady is going on. No. I know it's all so subjective. I'm just like, no, this is not a 95%. Get out of here.
And I think, unfortunately,
I'm with the 95%.
I know you are.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's already hard enough to, I think, believe a lot of people when they see anything that's like 90 or that high anyway. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right, I'm gonna address some comments and then I'm gonna move on to the numbers that it did this weekend. Honestly, I think we should move on from Bruce Wayne on the big screen. Why is Warner Brothers so scared to adapt Batman Beyond? It's got so much potential. Think Batman in a Blade Runner world. That would be interesting. They haven't done that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the possibilities are endless. There are ways to kind of reinvent the wheel. Even with I know you haven't gotten to it yet, but someone had mentioned kind of having a 40s Batman or kind of going back.
Yes. Yeah. I'll pop it up now. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like even that, I understand, like, yes, I'm a little burnt out on Batman and Superman as well, but like that's even a way to kind of reinvent it a little bit, like going into the future or going into the past. Like what would that look like in the times that these comic books were created? You know, it gives it a different kind of lens.
Right. I would be totally down for that sort of reimagining you know, live action. Did you guys ever see the what was the one about him going back to Jack the Ripper times or him being in the something Gaslight?
Oh
Did
no, that's
did
not.
you?
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, you talking about the animated movie?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
the animated movie. Did you see it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I like that
Okay.
one.
Well, because
Yeah.
it's like Jack the Ripper, and you were talking serial killers. So see, again, the dark, gritty, scary,
Correct.
like that is what I like. I need to watch that movie. I don't know why I haven't, but
Some of
Batman's
those Batman animated movies, just like
so
the
good.
random one-offs, or like the Elseworld kind of things, they tend to be super cool. That's a really good one, and then it's completely different, but took more to like what Dee's point about like kind of reinventing things. There's Batman Ninja too, that's kind of like takes it to like this very over the top, like almost anime as kind of like level that's just like super different, but it just goes to show. I would say Batman's a perfect example, right? Like look at Lego Batman, that works too. Like it's a character that can be done so many different ways. And a
Or
lot of these
Batman
characters, I
versus
would say for the
Dracula.
most part, you can.
Yep.
And Spider-Man's about to go down that route soon too, with Spider-Man Noir, where they're bringing Nicolas Cage's character back
Oh, yeah,
from
that's
into
right.
the Spider-Verse. That's going to be a live action, cool black and white, like noir Spider-Man flick. I wish it was getting a theatrical release. I think it's just going to
Oh, it's
Amazon
not?
Prime. I think it's an
Oh,
Amazon Prime release. I could be wrong, but either
Don't
way.
okay.
forget to take out your trash cans.
Oh, what? Okay, solo Batman is always more intriguing, but it depends on which iterations of the Justice League. Yeah, probably. Um, I think Gunn made a good choice in making this Superman with more of a comics feel. Well, definitely more of a comics feel with certain eras, I guess,
Yeah.
like the Golden Age. Is comic book movie fatigue becoming a reality? I will personally say that I don't think it's comic book fatigue in itself. I think it's just fatigue with poor writing, which has been happening a lot with these movies. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I understand it's easy, and certain things can become like buzzwords or just kind of repetitive. So we've heard
Yes.
that, ad nauseum. So because the thing is, like, if it's a good film, then I think one of my friends said this before. It's like, but if it's a good film, we enjoy it, and then when it's bad, we're kind of back down in the, the kind of back in the valley, peaks and valleys, basically. So I think part of it might be just kind of the frustration of, hoping like, okay, we're going to get back to, okay, no. Okay, well, I like this, but kind of the back and forth, up and down of it. I think that is, a little tiring in and of itself. But I do think that the wasted potential with writing and with, the execution, I do think that probably feels more frustrating because, like it or not, even if there were films that people didn't like within the MCU, they were kind of on a really solid trajectory, kind of like Pixar. It's like you can count on this to be like really solid stuff for the most part, more often than not. And so to kind of get to a space where it's just like, I don't really know what I'm going to get, I think that uncertainty kind of makes it worse.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So there's some other comments. People have popped in and have said hi. Hi, deleted. Thanks for stopping by. And now I want to, and I'll get to some more comments too that I've been starring as we talk. So Polly sent over this information to me earlier to go over the numbers. The budget for this was $225 million.
I'm surprised.
I don't know that I buy that it's that low, but
Right.
whatever. It's worldwide debut. Have you guys been keeping on top of all this? Have you been paying attention to the numbers for this?
Actually, I wanted to hear, but I actually ended up missing it.
Okay. Have you, Anthony? Have you heard?
I've seen just a couple of like maybe what it made like on preview night, but I don't know what the end of weekend numbers are looking like right now.
So I'm curious what you guys think before I tell you what it is. I'm just curious. What do you think it made, Dee? Worldwide. This is worldwide.
Worldwide.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that, just in my mind, I'm assuming it might have gone past the 225 million already. Might be somewhere closer to 300 million possibly that it's made.
Okay. What about you, Anthony?
We're talking worldwide?
Yes, worldwide.
I don't know, man. Because the hype has been big. I know a lot of people I know that don't even go to the movies have gone to the theaters, or like this is the main movie this year that I had the second I got out of the theater, because I had posted like now watching or whatever. The second I got out, I had like over 10 different messages from people across different platforms, like, hey, what was it good? Hey, was it, like,
Right.
so I don't really get that often, even with the other big movies that I see from my peers. So the hype was there. I want to say it's made over 200 million, but I almost want to kind of throw in, just in case it's going to have legs later on, word of mouth. I'll say between 180 and 200.
Okay. So this is what it made worldwide. According to Polly's numbers earlier, that they might have been adjusted. I have no idea, but these are the most recent as far as I know. It made 217 worldwide.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Domestically, 122.
Oh, okay.
So,
Pretty good.
it's
Pretty
pretty
good start.
good. It has almost made back its budget. It'll be a bit yet before it actually maybe, breaks even or makes a profit. What do you think it did in China?
Oh, now you know what? Okay, well, I wasn't lying, but I suddenly remember when you put it in the chat. I think I saw what it was, and that
Oh,
was
you did. That's right. I did share this with you, but you guys didn't pay attention, so now I know.
yeah. I just saw the one because I was like, I figured we were going to talk about it, so I didn't really want to hone in on it. But I did see the China part. So, yeah.
Right? That was a little surprising. Did you see the China part?
I didn't.
Anthony?
I didn't know.
It only made 6.6 million. This is a little surprising to me.
That's surprising, but also not surprising to me. And only this, because every here and there's these really, really popular IPs in the States and in other countries that China just doesn't embrace. One of those is my favorite one, Star Wars. We're both wearing Star Wars shirts. Star Wars doesn't really do gangbusters in China, like compared to where it does everywhere else in the UK or specifically in the States or, Canada, like they just don't do huge numbers in China. Like Star Wars just doesn't resonate as big with that fan base. So I'm not surprised to hear that because especially with the relations in the modern day with, America and China and Superman is so kind of like he's not, but he's kind of DC's Captain America. He's kind of got like the American idealism kind of like vibe to him,
Mm-hmm.
So I could see why it maybe wouldn't do huge over there, but I am surprised it's that low. But
that's
right.
pretty low. I'm curious. I didn't look this up, and I'm not going to take the time to look it up now. But I'm just curious how this compares to other comic book movies that have played over there. The cinema score for this was A-. That's being extremely generous to me.
That's pretty good. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all.
And now we have some demographic breakdown that he sent me. Caucasian audience 55%, Hispanic 22%, Black 14%, Asian 8%. Premium formats. Now I don't know when he says premium formats exactly what he means by that. Do you guys know?
I'm gonna assume it means like the people who saw it in like IMAX, Dolby.
IMAX, of course. When he said premium, I'm sitting there thinking 3D, but he already showed me the 3D number.
Right.
No, I think you're right. 47%. So yeah, it sounds like it did pretty well in those types of theaters. 3D was 13%. I don't think I could stand a 3D. No, it would make me sick to my stomach.
I'm over 3D, and I have been for a long time. But I have heard from the people who saw it in 3D that it's a movie that, like, the action is very suited to the 3D.
Yeah, his face right up in your face, exactly with the flying shots. The top location was AMC Burbank. I've actually been to that theater. That was the theater that I went to last year when I was in California, and that's when I watched a movie with Pauly and Chris Gore and Dante. Yeah, it was that one. What? Yeah, it was that one. Yeah, it was terrible. We all hated it. We all hated it, but I have fond-ish memories because that was the movie that I was. Yeah, it was terrible. Hated it, but anyway. So obviously, top market, Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And so the numbers are from ERC Box Office. So yeah, that's that. So in addressing this comment here, movie is bad and underperforming. I don't know that it's underperforming. I guess we'll have to see if it's got legs. I kind of feel like it will because it does seem, despite my Debbie Downer attitude about it, it does seem that most people who have seen it, and especially like most normies, I call them normies, it seems like they're pretty well satisfied if you believe the Rotten Tomatoes number, which I don't fully, but if you believe it, because it does seem like there's this big Gunn versus Snyder crap going on Twitter. It seems like most people enjoyed this film. I don't think this coming weekend there's going to be much to challenge it, but the next weekend is Fantastic Four, right?
Right. Yeah, I think its biggest release this weekend is like Eddington and Smurfs. Maybe some families will get pulled away from Superman, but I can't imagine Smurfs is going to make a dent. Having seen Smurfs yesterday, I really can't imagine it's going to be pulling people from. I don't think people are going to be going to see Smurfs as much once reviews drop. I'm under embargo. I will be writing a review.
Oh, that's
for
right.
The Latino
That's right.
Slant.
You're writing a review for that.
I
okay.
am. That'll be out on Wednesday when embargo lifts. But yeah, and quickly just to touch on it, I just pulled up a couple other movies. What's it called, of the DC franchise in recent years that have kind of come out. Batman vs Superman in 2016. Its opening weekend was 57 million.
Domestic?
In China, yeah, China opening.
Oof.
Yeah, so
wow.
Overall, it only made $96 million in China, so it didn't do huge numbers in comparison. But yeah, and then Justice League, 2017 one was the highest DC movie in China with 98.6 million overall. I couldn't find something of its opening weekend, but yeah. And then on the flip side, though, in 2023, Shazam's total China box office was 4.3 million. So I guess Superman's doing better than Shazam.
Well, by a little bit, y'all.
You're right, but at least it has some time to grow those numbers. Whereas that was Shazam's entire China run, which
and yikes. Shazam was another one of those sort of more goofy type of portrayals, and those other movies you were talking about were a little more serious. Now, obviously, the theatrical version of the Justice League was a little goofy and lighthearted and silly, but Batman versus Superman, that's that darker tone. So I wonder if it has to do with tone or what. I have no idea. But
yeah, I'm curious to see how it does overall, like over the course of the next couple weeks, because the word of mouth has been good. The reality is most people seem to have enjoyed the film, and I think that the Twitterverse sometimes makes it seem like that's the loud majority, but I always think about with movies, it's like with anything that gets like review bombed, or like there's so much fighting online about things. I just think about like the family of 7 that has grandma, grandpa, little Jimmy, little Sally, mom and dad. The reality is maybe one person in that group is running to Twitter or to IMDb or to Rotten Tomatoes afterwards to say something. They're either going to like it or they didn't like it, and they're going to go tell their friends they liked it or they didn't like it, and they're going to kind of move on. So I think sometimes Twitter makes it seem like there's so much of this conversation going on, but most casual, just like moviegoers that I know that I work with who went to see it, like all really, either enjoyed it or were like, yeah, it was fun. Like it's kind of the same with like Jurassic World. Like I think the three of us, I was a little bit more positive on it just because I love Jurassic Park so much. But even then, my first review for it was mostly me saying like, I hated this, but I like this. I hated this, but I like this. I even said at a certain point, I said, I know it sounds like I'm super negative on this one, but I like this. So I was kind of all over the place on it and torn, but I know I saw your guys' reviews and you guys were not fans. But I was just talking about it with some coworkers today who saw it, who all were like, oh, that was fun. Like they didn't have that same thing because I just think they're not part of that like Twitterverse of people who are part of the conversation. And so I think with Superman, I think there's going to be a lot of people who just walk out saying that was a nice way to spend my Saturday evening with Grandpa Joe.
Right. Well, also I think most audience members aren't going into a movie with the idea of picking apart what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
Like they just don't go in with this mindset, this expectation, and not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with that, but I feel like the three of us, we kind of have this, like regular audience members, I feel like they have a lower bar of expectation about things. So they're a bit more easily pleased maybe than people like we are. So Oh, well,
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah,
see.
I mean, I sometimes feel like a flat out a-hole when I'm like talking to people at work and they're like, I like this or I saw
Yeah.
this. And they're like, what did you think? You know, they know me as like the movie guy. They know
Yeah,
I
yeah.
go to see the movies early and stuff, and I'll be like,
Yeah, it
I didn't think
sucked, and
that
this is
was
why.
super
Da, da, da,
good.
da, da.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then they'll ask me why, and then they'll maybe combat a couple points, or then I feel bad when I can see that I made them realize that they don't like it as much as they do, or at least they start to kind of associate their now negative thoughts with what I'm saying. I'm like, I'm not trying to change your opinion. You know, like if you liked it, you liked it.
Yeah.
But I do think that a lot of people don't watch movies with that critical mind. They just want something to kind of like enjoy. Like I actually earlier was talking to a coworker who saw, it's called The Woman in the Yard, a horror film from earlier
Oh,
this year.
yes, I saw
Yeah.
that earlier this year.
Yep.
I missed it. I missed it. I didn't see it, and it was mainly because I saw so many people drop reviews for it saying it was bad, and I was like, I'm just not gonna waste my time. I don't have that immediate, like, it's not like an IP or something that looks really interesting to me. And you know, I had the coworker being like, "Oh, did you see that new movie that's on Peacock, Woman in the Yard?" I go, "Nah." They go, "You didn't see it?" Which I always love that. I'm sure you guys get that too. Like you see so
Right?
many movies,
You're
but
the
you miss the
movie
one
person.
movie.
What's wrong
Right.
with you?
And they were just like, I was like, yeah, you know, I missed out on it because so many of my friends who saw it said it was terrible, and I just wasn't, you know, I wasn't that interested. And they were like, oh, well, I thought it was great, and I'm just like, yeah, that's fine, you know, it happens.
Did
It is
you?
what it
So
is.
you have not watched it?
I haven't watched it, so I couldn't weigh in on it. But
so
you know,
about The Woman in the Yard, I feel a little conflicted because I like Danielle Deadweller's performance. She was
Right.
great. 40 Acres makes up for The Woman in the Yard. I'll
Yeah.
just say that, y'all.
Agreed.
Yeah. What bothered me about The Woman in the Yard, I thought it was very interesting how they handled this subject matter, but what bothered me about it was the fundamental messaging at the end.
Right.
I could not. It's made some people very. My first thought was, wow, if there's somebody that's struggling
Yeah.
with something like this and they watch this movie, oh no, there needs to be like I think my opening intro was, you know, like I'm not a fan of trigger warnings, but it feels like this movie needs one.
Right.
And Anthony, if you ever watch it, you'll know what we're talking about. But anyway,
well, now I
sorry.
kind of want to see it just because I've talked about it so much today. But it wasn't even on the mind until she mentioned it. I was like, oh yeah, that movie. But yeah, you know, I think it's stuff like that is always just a telltale that, like, you know, it's interesting to see what pops off with people. You know, some things people, the audience really turns against something, or people just choose like, I'm not going to watch it. And then there's something like this, you know, this kind of almost ties into what we were talking about earlier about superhero fatigue. And I know D kind of touched on it, but it's just like, it's either like something is good and people are all in, or they're just like not interested and they don't go support it, or we get inundated with so much of it that turns out to be pretty crap. I mean, last year Sony released probably two of the worst comic book movies ever with Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter. Kraven the Hunter, I think, is one of the worst comic book movies I've ever seen in my life. The
I
fact that
actually
I thought,
didn't mind that one, y'all.
oh,
Sorry, go
geez.
ahead.
That's
I
crazy.
know.
That's crazy. Oh, all right, we're gonna, you know, I'm calling the cops. But yeah, I mean, that movie for me was like offensively bad as a piece of comic book movie for specifically Kraven the Hunter. Like I just felt like they didn't do that character well, even though I think Aaron Taylor Johnson looks great. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, the audiences are all over the place because the quality of these projects, you know, and I watch them all because I love these characters. But then it's like, holy crap, you know, how do you go from
Right.
Avengers Endgame to like this newest Ironheart show that was like just like whatever, you know, like it just,
Yeah.
I'm just, and then you introduce, and this obviously is an Ironheart conversation, so no spoilers, but you introduce a ginormous character that fans have wanted to see forever in a show that's just kind of whatever,
Right.
you know, like it's like, and that for the grand reality is at a point where people have checked out from the shows, you know, because it feels like too much.
Yeah.
So I think that's
It
another
is.
part of it too. I'm curious to see where the DCU, to bring it back to DCU, I'm curious to see where that moving forward. How many people that went to go see Superman this weekend are going to watch Creature Commandos or going to watch the future shows? James Gunn has said that he wants to do movies and TV shows that are akin to what Star Wars has done, where it's you have shows and movies, but then you have shows that are like, okay, this show takes place in between these movies and kind of time hops instead of it being like the MCU where it's mostly just one continuous storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I like that Star Wars has done that with things like the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, Bad Batch. I think they have some really strong ones. but not everybody watches all those, like and then you have a show like Ahsoka that kind of requires that you watch that other stuff. And it's like, if you don't, then you're not fully you're never gonna fully appreciate the storyline being told there, because you hadn't seen all that animated stuff. And his intention is to have actors who played the characters in live action voice the characters in animation, and vice versa. So it's possible that we might see somebody from the Creature Commandos appear in live action one day, played by that same actor. Will it be a situation where people feel a little bit lost? Will it become a little bit too much? It's going to be interesting to see.
Okay, yeah, well, time will tell. I'm sure we'll be talking about this stuff further on. I'm going to address some comments, and then I'll kind of start to sort of wind up a little bit. And also, you guys, I'm going to echo here what Deleted says. Like, share, subscribe, become a member of Latino Slant. This is a great community here. Paulie's fantastic YouTuber, one of the hardest working YouTubers that I know, and so I think you will benefit greatly from some of the conversations that he has on his channel. Solomon said, I enjoyed Superman movie, wasn't a fan of the film score, should have been way better. Wish we had more character development, but overall I enjoyed it, and Corn Sweat is a nice Superman. Okay. Yeah, Gotham, but yes, right, that one. Gun Superman is middle for me, lower than 78, Man of Steel, higher than Returns, 3, and Quest for P. Well, yeah. Probably for everybody. Exactly. Azteca, shout out to the panel and everyone in the chat. Thank you so much. Okay, let's see. I think maybe I've gone to the end of my starred ones. Now we got some new ones. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. You guys, if I've missed any chats, I apologize. This is my first time doing this, and this is a bigger crowd than I'm used to on my own channel. Oh, how about a live action Ninja Bat? Well, he kind of was portrayed, sort of that origin part of him was shown in Batman Begins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's referring to the animated movie.
The
that's
one
like
you were
very,
talking about?
Yeah, it's like very like I want to say Japanese inspired in terms of the artwork.
Same artwork and design as the one with Dracula? Because that looked a little anime-ish to me.
It's not the same design, but they do kind of pull from like anime things. With Ninja Batman, if you look it up, it's like very hyper stylized. Like everything about it's meant to kind of look like very Asian oriented. Like, yeah. Okay,
what do you guys think about this?
I think Superman's going to do better, but I don't know. I think there is a little going back on the fatigue conversation. I do think there are people who just like are a little bit more burnt out on Marvel and are a little bit more open to something fresh with Superman. Like they don't have to like do homework. Right. And True. Thunderbolts just unfortunately tanked at the box office, even though I thought that was a good movie. It didn't do well, and the box office reception, and that movie teases up, Fantastic Four. So it's like
at the end.
I think there might be, I'm open to possibly being surprised simply because, what's it called? Mainly because of the fact that, people are excited for the Avengers, and they've already announced that these characters are going to be in the Avengers. So it's like, I'm sure there'll be a little bit more for that, but I don't know. I'm curious, Marvel's been so all over the place.
Yes, they've been very hit or miss. I'm just wondering if the performance of this will affect the performance of Fantastic Four. And by that, I mean, if people are very satisfied with this and this does well, will that make them more excited and more willing to go see something like Fantastic Four? I personally feel like there's been more hype and excitement about this film than about Fantastic Four. Yeah, we'll find out, won't we, in just a few weeks. Yes, Twitter definitely is.
Definitely.
Hello, Donovan. Okay, yeah, Woman in the Arch trailer dropped. Oh, did they? I never watched the trailer, so. But yeah.
Sin, I actually had a question about Peacemaker. So given that, like, we know it premiered in 2021. Think ended in 2022.
Was it that long ago?
It was that long ago. Because I remember you and I were interacting, and I was saying, so we got 2 years to wait for the next season.
Oh, that's right. It's been forever.
Yes. And so, given that there's been a lot going on with the restructuring in the DCU, there's been strikes, there's been a lot of things that have like pushed stuff back. For you personally, and it's not just about Peacemaker, but it's one example. Whenever a show or a film is this far out, from not just in years, but 2021 was a very specific time, and we were all in a very different mindset then. Do you
Yes.
think that is it difficult? Do you think it's worth it to still, excuse me, do you find yourself still having the same excitement or potentially having the same investment with it being so far out? Or is it still kind of like, yeah, I'll still give it a shot?
I'll still give it a shot, but the excitement level is notched down because it has been so long. It's like that dilutes your expectation when it's taking forever, because there was so much that happened after that. Then when they had all of that restructuring and everything and getting rid of all this stuff. So, I'm still looking forward to seeing it, but I kind of have a feeling that it's not going to be as enjoyable as or as solid as the first season.
Mhm. Yeah. Because I was,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
It surprised me how much I liked that because I didn't think I would,
Yeah, same.
so
But
that's why it worked.
right. But no, I've just been noticing because usually I feel like for the most part, and it's not to negate anyone else's, because I like to think some people are maybe more patient than others. And I feel like because we're in the streaming era, especially with series, when something is done, like the next week, folks are like, okay, so where's the next season? And it's like, no, it
Right.
takes time. Like it takes time for these things to come out. Like people, like there's a process involved. And I feel like because of that, I have a little bit more patience because I'm like, okay. And there are so many, there's always so much other things to watch, all these different platforms that I can be okay. But I realize, given that, like the Old Guard 2 just came out, and then other things,
yeah.
like I was in my mind, I was just suddenly thinking like, man, I feel like I can recall the headspace I was in. And I think some of that also contributes to my additional investment and my additional enjoyment, because it's like so much else outwardly is chaotic. And so it's like, it's also adding to this idea like, hey, we're venturing out, things are changing, I'm enjoying this series or film or whatever it is. And so I think to be so far removed, I find that I feel differently, because I was like, dang, maybe it has been too long. And I usually don't say that, but I'm realizing that. So that's kind of why I asked you. What about you?
Anthony?
Sorry, I forgot that I muted my mic. I was talking to my wife for a second. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because it's like we're living in that space in general with all kinds of media, like where everything is taking 10 years and 10 nights to come out. And we're seeing that right now too with like Stranger Things. Like I feel like I've aged 50 years since the first season came out, so it's tough. And it goes back to what I was saying before about like with Peacemaker, like having been part of like a whole different time of this studio. It's like, I honestly don't know that I care anymore. Like, so it creates this.
It's that dilution.
Right.
Right. It does kind of like, I'm almost like more like, all right, let's move forward with something else. But,
yeah,
I don't know.
I think it's that kind of strike while the iron is hot. And if the iron isn't hot anymore, then
it's going to get cold. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah, Donovan, Woman in the Yard is a rental, but I would even say, given the messaging, I wouldn't even recommend it.
I think it's on Peacock or something now. I got that. Maybe one bored day. I'll throw it on.
If you ever watch it, Anthony, I'd be really curious to hear what you think. You will know exactly what we mean when we're saying messaging. And it's not the messaging that you think, like, we talk about messaging in movies, like the worst. Right. No, not like that at all. Just, oof. Howard the Duck is considered the worst. It's a Marvel character. So, yeah, not everybody's in love with Thor Ragnarok. I saw it at a bad time in my life. My mom had just been diagnosed with cancer, and so it wasn't the enjoyable experience I was hoping. And I don't think it's aged so well. I don't really like that goofy portrayal of Thor, and I never watched the other one.
Yeah, as someone who liked the first Thor and fell asleep on the second one because it was a mess.
That one wasn't good.
Right. I like visually, I was kind of like, okay, we're kind of going in a different direction. I think even when they did the initial, like how they changed the, because I remember the title or the logo or whatever used to be kind of different. And then they kind of went into an 80s vibe. And I was like, okay, let's see what's going on here. I didn't mind that as a refresher, you know, seeing Jeff Goldblum. Like I enjoy those elements. But I will say, although I did laugh, you know, at a good amount of times, it also veered so far off course into the rampant kind of dumbed down comedy, which, like I said, it was enjoyable, but they went so far, like course correction in the other direction, much like this, where it kind of felt like, okay, like we have to have some more grounded, gritty stakes in here as well. So, and then they completely OD'd in Love and Thunder with the screaming ghosts. I was just like, my lord.
Yeah. I am so glad I never saw that one. No, thank you.
Yeah, if you didn't like Thor Ragnarok, which I am a fan of, I did a rewatch of it last year, and it was
I don't think I'd like.
Yeah, no, that last one, Love and Thunder. While I didn't hate it, it's definitely like they just went too far into goofy.
It went too Taika Waititi, or however the hell you say his name.
Right,
it went too much into him.
Yeah,
agreed.
That's what happened. So yes, Ryan, back in the 80s, yeah, a TV show would be 22 episodes in one season, and they would happen every year. And now 6 to 10 episodes, which I'm going to say I don't mind the shorter seasons because I feel like the quality can be better. You can make shorter episodes. Sorry, with not shorter episodes, shorter seasons, but with longer episodes, like, you know, an hour or so.
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer that to episodes with seasons with 20 some episodes, and a lot of it's filler.
Right. I will say that's the one thing.
But we're having to wait too long in between these 6 to 10 episodes.
Right.
And sometimes it's the flip side, right? Because sometimes it's the only 6 or 5 episode series that just doesn't feel like it has enough time to breathe, where it's like, you know, they don't push it a few more episodes. Because I agree. I think, like, you know, listen, there are certain shows I love that I can go back and watch that have these 20 episode seasons. But then sometimes, like, especially in the comic book space, like, oh my God, the CW Arrowverse shows just started to get so bad after season 4 or 5 of them, because it's like they don't know what to do for 23 seasons. Like the Flash is fighting like, you know, Hot Dog Man at that point. It's like, dude, like,
Oh yeah.
and there's like, meanwhile, the main villain is out there somewhere, you know, and he'll show up 3 episodes later. But now because he needs a villain of the week, you know, here comes Spaghetti Guy, and it's like, dude, like, you know, let's hone in a little bit. But then on the flip side, there are things like Ironheart that I feel didn't benefit from its 6 episode run. Like I think it could, if had it been just a little bit longer, it could have done something, you know. And it's like, I don't know.
That's how I felt about Moon Knight. It's like it was an interesting trajectory, and then they kind of had this big fight amongst the pyramids, and then just kind of all smashed. I was like, all right, not what I was expecting.
Right. That's a great, and I like that show, but I think had it had just a few more episodes to just really flesh things out. Like we've either have too short of shows or it's too long, and I'm curious to your guys' thoughts. Obviously, it's kind of off topic, but now Wednesday is coming back after a few years off again.
Right.
The hype was so big, and now it's coming back, but they just announced that part 1 is coming, you know, like part 1 of season 2. It's like, I'm so over the multi-part season. Like I think Stranger Things is being released in 3 parts for this next season. It's just like, brother, come on, dude. Like, because here's the problem for me is like I watch so much, and you guys the same thing. We watch so much, and then it's this thing where you're like, you know, where the hell did we leave off? You know, like where did we leave off with the 4 episodes you gave us, and now I got 4 more, and like Cobra Kai did it with their last season too. I'm just like, come on. If you're already going to take forever to release the season, let's not release it over the course of the next year and a half. You know, like let's give us like something a little bit more. You know, just give it to us. And then sometimes like you know, obviously brought up the comic book shows, and sometimes like the filler house that's so silly, but it can be done with the longer seasons too. With like, I don't know. I did a rewatch a few years back of like Lost, which came out just like a peak time for television. And I think for the most part, those over 20 episode seasons were able to handle, you know, keeping the stories interesting. So I was like, okay, cool. If we were gonna hone it down to cut out some fat, that's cool. But it can't be too short, and it can't be 16, you know, years apart. It just can't.
Right. But see, this whole thing about series, this is exactly why it's much easier for me to just stick with movies. It's hard
Agreed.
to commit to see, and there's so many of them out there. And then, you know, like we were saying with the MCU, there's all these shows like homework you have to do before you can watch a movie, you know, and fully appreciate or understand what's going on. So it's kind of a bit of a turn off. I don't know. I have heard about K-pop
Yeah.
Demon Hunter.
I've heard
Or
it's
Demon
incredible.
Hunters.
It's on my
Yeah.
list to catch up on. I didn't expect it to be so popular, and I have so many coworkers who have been like, "Have you seen K-pop Demon Hunters?" I go, "No," but everybody tells me I should watch it. But I agree with you on the notion of TV. I have like usually with TV, if it's like a new show that's going to be dropping episodes and it's a series I'm already established in, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, insert other random show I'm already currently watching, then I'll keep up with it like that. But I'm always late. I just watched Squid Game season 1 and 2 right before season 3 because my wife and I will alternate turns and pick what show we're going to watch. And so she chose Squid Games, and the timing was perfect. But otherwise, I'm always late to TV shows because I'm sure you guys have had this too. You watch a whole TV season and then it gets canceled, and then you just wasted so much time on a series that like never went anywhere. And then you're just sitting there like, okay, like now I kind of have to just watch something else. So I tend to wait for things to be popular or like survive.
Or wait for it to be done.
Right.
You know,
right.
or if you find out, there's 3 seasons in this. My first question is, but does it end on a cliffhanger, or is everything resolved? I don't want to be investing my time in this if it's
unless it's something like I know is it's gonna finish, or you know, like if it's part of a franchise I already know, it's for the most part it's gonna finish. You know, like if it's part of a popular IP. But yeah.
Okay. All right. So to sort of kind of start closing things out, I'm gonna go around with you guys and ask what's coming up on your channel, and what would you like to plug? D, you can go first.
Alrighty, so once again, this is MovieMann, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And I have been in the midst of a slight pivot. So I've obviously, I do reviews. I've been discussing The Gilded Age. But I'm starting to kind of get into a little bit more introspective content within films. So I would just say stay tuned for that. I'm trying to work on making the adjustment. But outside of that, I had some very interesting thoughts on the life of Chuck, on an indie film called Nora, and then, of course, Jurassic World Rebirth, which I
saw your review for that.
You said what?
I saw your review for that. The intro shot of you. Okay.
I was gonna say review because because I'm really kind of getting at the business. I tried to find a couple of good things, but yeah. So if you don't mind, the occasional rant and just general commentary on film as someone who loves it, feel free to check me out.
Yes, subscribe to D, you guys. His channel is great. Same for Anthony. What you got coming up? Y'all sub to Anthony, please. What's going on?
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This has been a blast to do, and love chatting with you guys. And I've actually, to kind of plug something on my channel, I've recently been doing like a game show, kind of debate show. Sin was on yesterday as one of the contestants. It's called Convince the Panel. I'm only 4 episodes in, really enjoying it so far. D was on episode 2. That was a lot of fun. And that's been a fun part. So if you're into debate shows, if you like things like the movie Trivia Schmodown or like movie fights back in the day on Screen Junkies, definitely head on over to my channel. But outside of that, movie reviews definitely are the main thing that I am known for over on my YouTube channel this week. Well, I just dropped a review for Elio that I'm a few weeks late on, but so that's a new review that just dropped. I also, of course, covered Superman this previous week. Do short form content as well. And then this coming week on Tuesday, I'll have a review up for a new A24 film called Sorry Baby. On Wednesday, I will have a review up for Eddington, the new Ari Aster film. And I will have a review up for the new Smurfs movie. So completely different kind of movies, but both of those films, the embargoes drop on Wednesday. Paulie has asked me to do written reviews for the Latino Slant website for both Eddington and for Smurfs. So expect a written review for me on the website this week for those. And then I will be covering the week at the top of the next week. I will be dropping a review for a new film dropping on the horror streaming service Shudder called Monster Island, which from what I understand is like a Japanese like take on like Creature from the Black Lagoon kind of thing.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know if it's going to be good or not. Shudder's a little hit or miss, if I'm honest, but
Yes,
I
they are.
There.
I believe Paulie also asked me to do a written review for that. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, that's the main stuff coming up. And then there's a new episode of Convince the Panel coming this coming week, the debate show I just mentioned. I was going to do it this week, but I had to rearrange things. But this coming week, in celebration of Superman, I will have a DC episode to Convince the Panel. All the questions will be about DC. So if you guys want to see two comic book nerds that I'm having on the channel to go head to head in that debate, definitely tune into that.
Awesome. Okay, so for me, let's see. I've got a review coming out for an upcoming movie called Oh Hi. That was a mystery movie, like last week or something like that. And I think I'm going to do maybe just a quick take, what I call a quick take review for Abraham's Boys, which I saw last night, which is a Shudder original.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And after that, I am not sure what I've got because on Wednesday I go to Denver for Sound Booth Theater's Lit RPG Con, first Lit RPG Con ever. Yeah, so I'm going to Denver for that. Never been to Denver, and then coming back Monday, and then a couple days later I'm going to San Diego for San Diego Comic Con. So I got a lot going on. I know that the Monday I get back from Denver, I'm going to try to go to the Regal Mystery or the Screen Unseen, and then maybe do a live stream after it. But it's just a lot, y'all. So I don't know how much content I'm going to have up on my site in the immediate. But yes, that's what's going on with me for Latino Slant. I do have sort of an announcement that Polly would like me to share. That Rosa Parra is going to, you guys know. I'm sorry, not Para, it's Parra, Rosa Parra. She will give her best movies of 2025 so far. She's already started that list, apparently. So it's going to be here on the channel and the website, as well as her favorite top 10 Lin-Manuel Miranda songs. And so, yes, the Latino Slant does cover music in addition to movies, music, pop culture. They also cover, on Mondays, they cover social issues and things like that. They delve a little bit into, political stuff, but it's always very interesting conversations, and I always appreciate Polly's patience in dealing with those types of conversations because, it can be a little, sometimes people get fired up, and I think he does a really good job at that. So also, our movie reviews, like Anthony was saying, he's already written a couple, and I've been writing for Latino Slant. Yes, here we go. Yes, everyone go to thelatinoslant.com and sub to Latino Slant, subscribe, become a member. It's a great community, and this will basically wrap up our first episode of Los Cinematicos, and hopefully we'll be back again in a couple weeks. We'll see how this goes on. I think these fellas I've got here with me are going to be the sort of the core group of this series show. We'll have people coming in and out. Polly will be joining us. Rosa might stop by too, and other people, that we might extend invites to, depending on subject matter, and we'll announce all that as ideas come to us and we figure out what we're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and hit end stream, and an outro video is going to play. You guys hang around so we can chat a little bit afterwards. Thank you so much, everyone, in the comments for talking, interacting. It's been a blast. I'm sorry if I missed any comments that you really wanted me to pay attention to, but this was a little bit for me, So trying to do the best I can. Y'all take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. Bye.